What's up, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alex, and in this episode, I'm going to show you what you need to know when doing an underbody inspection on an old car. So the car I have here is a 1992 to 1995 Honda Civic hatchback. This is one of the most basic cars you can get. This is my daily driver, and it's a little side project of mine outside of the RX-7. Now, I'm going to put this car on the lift in just a minute, and I'm just going to show you some things to look out for underneath.
Okay, now that we're under the car, we're going to start at the rear. First thing we're going to look for is any rust. Now for me, I live in a great climate where I don't have to worry about any snow or ice, and that means no salt on the roads. However, for you, you may live in a place where rust is an issue. So start with looking for rust anywhere on the body, suspension points, etc. One of the big culprits of it can be the spare tire well, because if moisture gets inside your car, it'll collect in the spare tire well and rust there. Look underneath the wheel wells. Snow will collect underneath the wheel wells where the tires are, just from being thrown around by the tires. A lot of times that snow will get crammed up underneath the quarter panels, and moisture will get locked in there and will have nowhere to escape. So you'll have more rust generate in those areas as well. Okay, after you've given the underbody a thorough inspection for rust, we also definitely want to take a look at the suspension components, and one major culprit for poor handling are the bushings. A lot of the OEM rubber bushings will go bad, most likely because they dry out, especially if you live in a dry climate. Over the years they'll dry out, they'll crack and just become worn. And one major culprit with these older Hondas is the rear trailing arm bushing. You can find a lot of information out there already on how to replace these and why they were such a poor design, but basically there's not enough rubber reinforcement in the bushing itself, and it becomes a weak point that fractures over time. So a lot of companies offer an aftermarket bushing that provides more rubber support, or you can get a polyurethane version. I opted for the polyurethane version from Energy Suspension, because I also bought their master bushing kit for all of these suspension arms, which I will go into in another episode where I replace everything. From there, I decided to move on and check out the brake and fuel lines of the car. For this car, they are absolutely fine, but something to keep in mind: if your brake lines start to look dry and cracked, that you may want to replace the rubber line soon, or replace them with an aftermarket stainless steel braided line. We will also check out the fuel tank itself, just check around for any rust of the fuel tank, and then we can move on to the exhaust. If you have a loud rattling exhaust, it's most likely rust has gotten to it and ate a hole somewhere. Because again, I live in a great climate, my exhaust is actually pretty good, so I'm happy with it and going to leave it as is. And now we get to the fun stuff, underneath the motor and the front suspension near the axles. Now you can see on my front end I actually have a bad CV boot, and I have axle grease gone everywhere. That's why when I took the wheel off, I was looking at the wheel because it was a mess. And you can see the grease on my tie rod end, on the knuckle, and everything. So that boot will definitely need to be replaced, but actually I already have aftermarket axles in my garage, and I was just waiting to finish this video so I can install it. From there, I like to take a look for any leaks underneath the engine or transmission. I definitely have a leak going on somewhere on the transmission or above, and I haven't found the exact source yet, but the fluid that is on the transmission is actually coming from above, and I want to say it might be coming from the distributor. I'm not 100% sure yet. But you can also see on the transmission there is some CV joint grease that is on the transmission. Now that was there when I first bought the car. Even though the CV boot was replaced, they never cleaned up the old grease. So that did tell me at some point the previous owner did replace the boot or the whole axle itself. It's hard to say, but we do know that okay, it was maintained somewhat properly. And again, I just want to point out the old suspension bushings in the front here. I'll zoom in and you can see that these front bushings are dry and cracked and not looking as good as they used to be. If you have a sloppy shifter and you've already inspected the bushings for your shifter inside the car, it may also be a good idea to check out the bushings for the shift linkages. Now this doesn't apply exactly if you have shifter cables like a lot of newer cars do, but if you have an older car, this is something you want to look out for. And last but not least, let's look for the weird stuff. Look for any shady work or anything that might have a story behind it, like this lovely dent in my oil pan. So the previous owner didn't tell me about the dent in the oil pan, and it's really hard to know exactly what happened, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was associated with my front tow hook. As we take a look over here, you can actually see the tow hook on the driver's side is completely bent. My guess is one of the previous drivers, there was only 2 of them before me, must have curbed the vehicle. They must have drove it over a curve and somehow dented the oil pan and tow hook, or this could be 2 completely separate things. But the car is still running fine, so there's no complaints from me.
So I hope this video gives you an idea of what to look out for when you're doing an underbody inspection. Obviously, not everybody has access to a lift like I do right now to do this. You may end up taking it to a mechanic friend who does have access to a lift, but you can benefit a lot from getting your car on the lift and just getting a look underneath, because it tells you a little bit of the story and the history of the car. Kind of like counting the rings of a tree. You get to know the age and a little bit more about its backstory. So I hope you guys found this video helpful and useful. If not, well, hopefully I didn't spend too much time editing this video. And I'll talk to you guys later in the next one. Thanks. Later.